So good morning, everyone. My name is Byung. I'm a career strategist from Academic Advising and Career Center, UTSC. And this is our postgraduate prep series. This is third session, so let's get going. So previously we had a two session. Last week we had a two session. So first session was where to begin. So how are we gonna actually prepare for our grad school planning? And then we discuss a little bit more detail about admission test and those requirements, which is very important things. And today is our third session, CV and personal statement. And one more, this Thursday, same time, 11 to 12, we're gonna have last session about the funding, how to support your financial situation for your grad school, references, how to get it, and also admission interview. So all these great necessary stuff that you need to know in terms of preparing for your grad school. So I'm gonna have a little bit of review session just beginning. So in our first week, where to begin session, we discussed the following these questions. I actually suggest the people to ask yourself these questions before you're making a decision. So what do I want my career and life to look like? That's the first things that you want to clarify before you actually making a decision to go for grad school. Just going for the grad school because grad school is the option that you have is not the best way to gain the best outcome. So clarifying, and it's your short-term goal for your grad school, and after that, this is what I'm gonna do, has to be clear before you apply. Then you decided what degrees or certificate program is suitable for me. Then you can actually finding the right program based on that. And third thing you should ask yourself is knowing your limitations. Financially, academically, geographically, is anything else that I need to consider that's going to be a barriers for my grad school application and also study. It's a big investment, so we really need to ask you these questions before you're making a decision. That was our first week. Of course, we did more than that. And the recording of this first week is now available on the link we are going to share. This further education showcase. The week was passed, but then we have all those recordings and information is still available. So we're gonna need to put that link on the chat box so you can take a look at it. Here we go. There is a link. And the second session we discussed about admission test and requirement, which is technically speaking, that's something you must have. Okay, that doesn't mean everybody going to grad school has to take admission test. No, there are a lot of schools they don't even ask for it, but there are quite a few those admission tests you should know if you are supposed to take those tests. And also the other requirements such as your GPA, which is the most concerning topic. Admission test is not going to replace your GPA. That's something I like to remind you. So quite a few students, oh, my GPA is not really strong, but maybe I will do the better in my admission test. Admission test to doing well is important, and it's going to be considered as one of those good profile that you can provide, but it's not really replacing your GPA. They actually see them separately for that matters. But low GPA doesn't mean you have no chance to go for grad school. Low, but you are able to meet their cut deadline, then you should have all those good options to providing the rest of them. So it's pretty much individual, and sometimes some grad school, they are a little more flexible for that matters. You really need to speak with the grad school or admission officers if you are concerning about your GPA. The rest of them is something we discussed more detail last week, and the week recording will be available soon. So I recommend you to take a look at it if you are interested in it. So today, our third session, and this is really important because CV or resume and personal statement or research statement, or sometimes they call letter of intent. This is one of the most important topic. We actually have to prepare for this. So before we begin, let me ask you this question. What is a CV? Okay, that's my question. And what's the difference between the CV and resume? I want you to just utilizing our chat box, just mention something. Okay, I think CV and resume is like this. This is the differences. Would you mind just putting something on the chat box? Let me just take a look at it. What's your understanding about CV and resume? Thank you. CV has the entire history. CV is longer. Okay, resume is tailored to the job. Very good. CV is a more complete record. Resume contains skills more specific to the job. CV has academic accomplishment. CV is more academic. Okay, question mark. CV is more condensed with all your experience. The resume is more specific to the application. CV is used for grad schools more. I like all these answers. I think you guys have some good concept about CV and resume. And one more, I think resume is shorter than CV. I think generally speaking, you guys have a good understanding about this. But the funny thing is, lots of grad school, I think they have a clear mind on their own term, but they make us confused. Sometimes they say, oh, we need CV. Sometimes they say, oh, we need resume. So sometimes we really need to clarify what they want rather than what I understand about it. So, but basically speaking, yes, CV and resume has that kind of differences. I'm gonna go very detailed a little bit later. My second question about the personal statement. What to include in a personal statement or a research statement or a letter of intent? They are all the same thing, but depending on program, they call different name. What are typical things that we need to include in our statements? Just put some words. Yeah, please use the chat box. Yeah, I think I need to include these kind of things on my personal statements. Please share your opinion. Passionate. Yeah, why you are passionate? Yeah, passion, definitely. What qualities you for the program you are going for? Why you want to do it? Yeah. Past experience related to the field? Absolutely. Personal statement. Oops, wait, I'm actually, well, it's keep coming. Why you want to go to this grad school? Yes, particular that school. Why you choose a school specifically, and how it will further your career will perfect. I think that's the good, connections. And your research interest, yeah, absolutely, because if you're going for the research program and your experience, academic achievement, yeah, achievement is another things that you are focusing on, and contribute to your interest, absolutely. What makes you a good fit for this program? Simply saying, yes, that's the one. Must include reasons why you are the best fit for the program. Yeah, a lot of those motivation and why and passion and some of those qualifications. I think you also have a good concept. However, unlike CV or resume, personal statement doesn't have any particular frame. It's an essay. So you could have some concept of those typical essay, but it doesn't really follow those typical, like, for example, resume, format, or even some student confused about cover letter and personal statement. It's totally different things. So anyway, those are the things that a lot of students are considered. We're gonna go into it very detailed. Thank you for sharing all your thoughts. It's always nice to have your own opinion first and then comparing with some others' opinion. So that's why I ask you. Okay, let's get going. So some of those common questions regarding CV and personal statement. Well, something like, okay, I have to make a CV, but what's the difference? Yeah, that's the question which we discussed, and then I'm gonna go a little bit more. Not sure how to begin my personal statement. Yeah, beginning is really tough, right? It's always like a good essay. Start with a very intrigue sentence, intrigue paragraph. So that's my suggestion too. don't make your first paragraph boring. No one going to read it. So that's something maybe we can discuss, but yeah, something more intrigue. So typically speaking, how you became so motivated to come to this program, to apply for this program, is something every admission officer is going to appreciate to read, okay? Do I need to include my research experience? 100% if you are going for research degree program. If it's not, it's an option, okay? Can I mention why I had low GPA in my first year? So I'm just saying first or second year, okay, to be safe. GPA is one of the big topics. If your whole CGPA is a little lower than what they're asking for, however, maybe their condition is, okay, your final 2 years GPA is what they are looking for. Okay, then you don't even have to mention your first 2 years, just focusing on your last 2 years. So depending on the requirements, you have to make a decision. Do I have to mention this low GPA or not? Right? So we can go with that. I don't have work experience. What should I do? Okay, work experience is a little bit gray area, means if you only consider paid job as a work experience, yes, you don't have a work experience. However, a lot of experience that grad school consider is not just paid job, including volunteer experience, any extensive school experience, such as volunteering for your props to do some extra project or some school curriculum development activities. So many things that maybe you can consider as an experience for that matters. So definitely you have to expand a little bit of your scope of experience. How long my CV and statement should be? That's actually depending on the program too. Sometimes they specifically mention it. If it's not, there is a general concept. We're gonna talk about it more detail. By the way, some of you guys asking question on the chat box, definitely, please go ahead. And I'm very sorry, again, I forgot to introduce all my colleagues who's helping me today. Wendy is our staff, our colleague, who's actually answering some of your questions on the chat box. So please, using our chat box, asking some urgent question. Oh yeah, I should have this question based on what Byung is talking. So go ahead and Wendy going to answer this question. However, at the end, we're gonna give you approximately 10 to 15 minutes for you to ask any question you have, not just CV and personal statement, but something else if you have. So I'm going to complete my presentation and then answer your question at the end, if that's okay with you. However, Wendy going to definitely answer many of your questions. Thanks, Wendy. Thank you. Okay, so continue on this common question. Next one is how important they are. They means like personal statement, CVR for my application. I have to tell you, it's really important. It's not optional. Most of the grad school, they're asking for personal statement. It's mandatory. I hardly seen any postgraduate programs that doesn't ask for this kind of personal statement or tell me about why you apply for this program, that kind of things. So you have to have this one. CV quite often is optional, but CV is actually supporting your personal statement in many cases. Okay. So let's talk about CV and resume first. So as I mentioned, some grad school, they don't actually making any big differences. Oh, whatever CV means resume or resume means CV. However, they're a little bit different, especially in North America. So CV, particularly saying their audience is for academic purpose, for the grad school, or applying to some jobs in the education area. So they want to know your academic accomplishments, right? So that's what CV is usually for. So the audience is professors or other grad school people who's actually going to look at your experience in the academic settings. So that's what generally CV for. Resume is for job, right? Absolutely, everybody knows about it. However, these days grad school, they tend to have more and more grad school actually asking for resume rather than CV, because not every grad school programs are research oriented. If it's research oriented, I really suggest you to think about CV as a default format for your application. They want to know your academic qualification, academic experience, research experience, all those things, and you have to put them in your CV. Resume, you don't have to, but resume is focusing on job search, job application. However, now your job is grad school when you're applying for the grad school. So when you're developing a resume for the grad school, the tone and the content should be a little different than typical job application. So let's think about that. So I talk about purpose and goal is something similar, so I'm not going to repeat that. So what readers see from the CV is a big picture, a little bit of, not too much detail of what you have done. Yeah, it is important, but not about that specific skill, but about your academic quality and some of those vision that you can have based on your research experience, that kind of things. Resume is pretty much everything. The important thing about resume is you have to prove yourself. So it has to be verifiable. Means you cannot just make it up. You cannot just say, I learned this thing and that's it. You have to give them some sort of evidence, right? Date, and then some of things specifically you learn or some of things you have done. So that's a typical resume thing, that's what the grad school is looking for too. Essential information in terms of CV is research experience, some publication, presentation, teaching experience, and grants. So that's what typical CV is looking for. However, these days, what grad school says CV, but that doesn't mean they are necessarily looking for this research-oriented experience only. So I'm going to share some sample, so you might have some idea. So mix of many professional qualification and educational qualification. In terms of length, CV has no limit. Typical CV is like minimum 2 to 5 pages, I should say, as an undergraduate student. If you are going for the PhD students, probably their CV could be 10 pages. You know what I mean? I mean, it could be, but there's no limit. Resume, try to make it 2-page maximum is safe. If you go anything longer than that, people are going to scratch their head as it's too many pages or something like that. So 2 pages sounds good to me. References in the CV, you could include, but that's optional because you always have to provide reference separately. Resume, don't include it because resume is a concise format and you don't want to reveal someone else's information there. If they're asking you to provide a reference, then you do it by that. You don't do it on your resume. But CV, you might want to mention it because those references are pretty much directly connected to your research. So that's some good indication. Professor or doctor of somewhere and their name as a reference. But I'm talking about only CV. I'm talking about only those research-oriented program CV, okay? But typical CV and resume for the grad school, you don't have to mention. So a little bit more about the CV. So depending on program, you really have to read it, what they're asking for. Because some of them asking very specific things, like MSW that I actually shared last week. The U of T MSW, Master of Social Work program, they have a very specific things they want to know. Okay, exactly indicating how many hours you have done from this organization and then give us those verifiable person, blah, blah, blah. So it has to really follow their instructions. Some program, maybe they just, okay, send us your CV or send us your resume and they didn't give any instruction, then fine. Trying to develop maybe a couple of pages, no more than that, probably. Focusing on your, important and relevant position you have done. You don't have to elaborate too much of your education, but a little bit. It's all depending on your background, by the way, because no idea, right, what you have done. So I really recommend you to come up with something and then meet with either career advisors or peer advisors to have a look on your CV. But following the instruction from the grad school's requirement is actually important. Some questions to consider. Do they require CV or resume? So just read it carefully. And do I know what types of skills and experience the admission committee is looking for? So depending on program, you could guess, or sometimes they even mention, we are looking for these kind of qualified students. Then you should focus on those competencies on your resume and CV too. Have I completed any major assignment or project in the subject area? Yeah, that's important, whether it's a research-based or professional degree. Based on your previous, your undergraduate experience, is there anything relevant to that grad school? And you better expand that. You better making separate categorical papers, academic projects, academic assignments, and then mention some of those is important. What relevant experience have I had? That's the question you should ask yourself. Do I have it? Am I a member of any association, student clubs, or have I completed any co-curricular activities, including pretty much everything about those? Okay, so don't forget these details. So that's why if they didn't really specify you have to have a 2-page resume, and they say, okay, just send us a CV. If you go for more than 2 pages, that's fine, right? But if they actually say, okay, give me your resume, we do 2 pages and keep that in the 2 pages. Okay. The last page of the CV is this. So depending on the program, right, different CV contents are required. So I'm actually sharing this sample, and this sample is available on the AACC website. So I'm gonna actually briefly show you that. So here, this is AACC website, and there's site menu, going down, further education, going down, application components, and there is a CV and personal statement. We don't provide personal statement sample because a personal statement cannot have a sample. It's pretty much like an essay. But we have some tips, and there's a resume and CV, and there's some samples here. Okay, so if you click one of them, it's the same sample, you will have all those details. I'm gonna just go briefly, very briefly. So this is a one sample. So I'm giving you a heads up. Every CV should be different, but this person actually applying for the speech language pathology program, which is fairly professional degree, but has a little bit of research component. So it has everything in it. So it is required for CV. This one is a Master of Science in Linguistics, and research is in it. So starting with the education, a little bit more than just U of T, right? Awards, scholarship, and fellowship, and mention about research interest and some project and paper you have involved as a course. That's fine. And some extensive description of a presentation and conferences you have attended, and some research experience if you have it, and readership and co-curricular activities, volunteer experience, and also professional experience. The order of this content should be depending on the grad school, how relevant it is. And the last 2 things they include is some technical, some other skills, right? Technical computer skills, stuff like that. And also if you speak different languages and additional training. So you could include those things. So it's not targeting specific job, it's targeting for overall education field and grad school if you have diverse and a little bit in-depth background in that area. So that's what they are looking for. So this is one good sample that you can follow. But by the way, this has to be different when you actually applying individual. I'm going back to my presentation. Okay, that's about the CV. I'm gonna move on to the personal statement. So before I'm just jumping in, I know that Wendy was very busy to answering a lot of questions. Is there anything that do you think we have to revisit? Let me just take a look at it.
Sure, Byung, do you want me to read it to you?
Yes, please, thank you.
So do we have to include the CGPA for our CV?
Okay. No, it's optional because anyway, you have to send the academic transcript. That's mandatory. So you don't have to, but maybe a little bit wiser way to elaborate some of your grade is based on the courses. So do you remember the sample I actually mentioned about some projects, right? Some of project has a, you can mention as a grade. So I did this project based on this course and I got A+, mention it. That's more like emphasizing some of those good highlights rather than mentioning CGPA. Okay, CGPA mentioning on the CV is, you could do it if you have a great CGPA, definitely, but I don't really want to say about it, but I like to emphasize a few of courses that I did very well, then that's probably even better. So thank you. I think that's a good question. If there's anything more, I will come back and then I'm definitely having us the time at the end. So I'm gonna get going, but I'm gonna come back to this. Thank you. Thank you for sharing and thank you for answering all those questions, Wendy. Okay, let's move on to the statement. Why is it required? Okay, so this is a good question, right? Transcript is not gonna tell them everything about you. Absolutely not. It's just academic score. But they want to see your good academic score. So transcript is important. However, they want to see more about you. So it's an opportunity for you to tell them about you, your passion, your motivation, anything else you want to tell them. Okay, so that's the personal statement. So typical thing what admission committee says is we are trying to gauge the potential for a student's success in a law school, for example, law school, and we determine that principally on the basis of what the student has done in the past. Yeah, that's it. What the student has done in the past. They want to know that. So that's the requirement of the statement and the CV. But CV is actually supporting your statement, actually, to be honest with you. Because CV is giving a little bit of facts, right? So it's important, but it's actually supporting your statement because you're gonna mention something in the statement and they want to verify this. So CV is kind of giving that option too. So UT recruiters say that it can give a holistic or comprehensive idea of a whole student. So that's the goal about getting this statement and CV for their grad school application. So what are the typical questions the students are getting from the school? Depending on program, they have all kind of different questions. I know there are some typical, but these are something I could share with you. Write about your experience and interest in your program, in our program. Okay, what's your experience and interest that is relevant to our program? That's what they meant. 250 words, something like that. So these days, online application, they're giving you kind of different way of submit your personal statement. Some asking you, okay, just making a 2 pages personal statement and then attach it as a PDF format. Some actually break down their question and okay, here is a box. You write it and copy and paste 250 words. Next question, something like that. So read carefully all those applications because depending on them, different personal statement request. What are the characteristics of a good teacher? So it's a teaching school and they actually want to know about this. And maybe they might ask the same question for different professional too. What inspire you to become this professional, right? What is kind of researcher? Inspiration. Demonstrate in the statement of interest that you have necessary background to pursue graduate level work in a social science master's program, 500 words. That's very typical personalized statement. So you could actually expand some of area. You could start with your education, you could start with your research experience, but there are many things you could demonstrate because that's what they said, demonstrate in the statement of interest that you have necessary background. So background could be education background, work experience background, research background, or some other community leadership background. Anything you believe could be a relevant strengths you can provide. That is a background they're asking for. Another one is tell us why you wish to pursue training in this program based on your personal, professional, and educational experience. Another very typical, question. Tell us about your personal story. Tell us about your professional background. Tell us about your educational experience that match with our goal of this program. So sometimes students are not 100% understanding about what the grad school is doing. What I mean by that is, let's say you decide to go for UTSC Master of Science in certain program, and you didn't even read their curriculum. You didn't even read their mission statement, then you should do it. You better actually read all those details about this program before you actually start writing your personal statement, because that's very important information. You get it first, and then you reflect those values and matching with your value and put it on your personal statement. Actually, sometimes people directly say so. Based on my understanding about this program is really focusing on value of blah, 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 blah. And in my past experience, I have done these kind of experience that I believe, matching with this kind of value. It's totally okay to say that. You study, you research, and you actually reflect. Isn't that the essay that we all should do? So consider this is your personal essay, but with good understanding about the program, you're sending it to the application. Okay. All right. Let's move on. So be clear about your writing goals before you're writing your personal statement. So think about your personal achievement. Okay. You can maybe make a list and think about which achievement is actually something I like to elaborate for this application. And focusing on their question. If they actually had a little bit specific things they're asking for it, you better answer it. You better answer clearly, because they're gonna review hundreds of personal statements. If you're not answering their question, you're just talking about yourself without considering answering their question, they have nothing to measure about you. So your statement is not gonna go anywhere. Show yourself in detail means, like, don't just say, yeah, I have developed such a great communication experience and skills. That's it? No. No one actually knows what you mean by that. So you better give them an example. You better give them an in detail. Show continuity from past to present. Yeah, just don't just focusing on just one area. You better, I've been doing this, and now I'm doing this. Maybe that kind of like a flow is actually a good idea. Explain your interest in their program. So two things about the program. You are very interested in this program. You better tell them that how much you are interested in this program. And also maybe you can mention about the school itself, how much this school is important for my future career. That's why I'm applying for this. You gotta have a good reason, good rationale for that matters. Well, state how you feel is actually probably the generalizing the whole things. So that's why I am feeding to this program, That's a goal. A little bit of formatting. Okay, so a little bit of format. All applications are formal, means you don't want to make it like a too informal. You don't want to be like a little bit hip. Okay, that's not really ideal. Okay, you don't have to say dear sir and madam, that kind of, no. That's not what I mean by the formal. But all those statements, you're using I sentence, by the way. You don't say like she or he did whatever. It's you did it. I did blah, blah, blah. But then your audience is admission committee. The professors are going to read it. So make sure that you're using all those terminology and languages, vocabulary as formal as possible. Yeah, it's essay format. So intro, body, conclusion, that's kind of things, absolutely. Topic is you, I mentioned about it. Limit one topic to each paragraph, because a lot of students, they made a mistake. They try to put a lot of things in one paragraph. Yeah, I have done so many things when I did this job, so I like to mention everything in this one paragraph. That's a mistake, because no one actually understands the point that you're trying to make it. Good English writing means one theme per paragraph. Okay, One paragraph should have one important theme, so everybody understand what you're trying to say. Support ideas in some detail means evidence. You gotta have evidence. Demonstrate. Write persuasively. Okay, that's the difficult part, but then that's something you have to consider. And avoid quoting excessively. So some people say, well, Einstein once said blah, blah, blah. That's fine, just once. And then okay, Newton also said this. And most recently, blah, 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 another person said this. You keep quoting someone else's things, it's not the best way. See, personal statement is about you. You better tell them about your own opinion. You can quote one or two maybe, but don't try to quote too much. That's making your whole statement looks, you're not about writing about your genuine yourself. You're writing someone else's opinion. That's not the personal statement. Okay. What to include? We discussed a little bit, but let's just review it. Personal background and goals. So don't be shy about telling them about your background. So let's say you don't have to tell them about your whole history, but some of your background revealing is totally fine. Something personal thing like culturally, or I was growing up this kind of area, or I was having a lot of pressure when I was a kid. I had a disability. I don't know, something about you that is relevant for you to think, motivate you is what I mean by the personal background. Not about every detail that about you, okay? Something motivate you, whether it was good one or bad one, something motivate you, okay? And then you gotta talk about some of your education background. So your undergraduate degree, okay? Maybe some major you are doing is not directly relevant to the grad school you're going for. That's fine. Still, your undergraduate degree has some great meaning and value. So tell them about how you did well and what was the things that you learned from this undergraduate degree. That's something about education. And then of course, the extra, no, not extra thing, beside education, work and volunteer experience, student activity, those things is something you should mention, if particularly if that work experience is relevant. And also, if you're going for research degree, 100% you have to mention about your research experience and your research interest. That is the biggest point of the research statement. Therefore, I am interested in pursuing my graduate degree, doing my research in this area. Okay, this is something you have to indicate clearly in your personal statement for those research degrees. And lastly, your career perspective. Absolutely important. Quite often students keep blurring about it. Don't. As I said, you have to make a short-term goal at least. Okay, long-term goal is good, but if you're not really clear about long-term goal, short-term goal. So with my degree of this program, I would like to pursue my career in this area, and I like to be this kind of professional. That kind of line should be clear, and how this school and this program is helping me for doing that is even better, because you're actually mentioning about particular school too. So that's what I mean by that in terms of statements. And addressing sensitive topics, this is something totally up to you. Sometimes it's relevant and it's actually necessary, then mention it. But if it's not, just asking yourself again, oh, do I really need to mention it? If I not, don't mention it. So for example, like failed course or GPA issue, do I really need to mention it? Otherwise, no. Any absence from studying, yeah, you could have any reasons. You have an illness, fine, but then does that actually resonate with some of those motivation? If it's not, no, you don't have to. Religion, political views, rules, laws, life events, any one of these, you could mention it as long as it's relevant, as long as it's actually motivate you and support your whatever argument you like to make it in your essay. If it's not, don't have to mention too much of those details. Okay. Let's have a little brief practice. Okay. Because a lot of students doesn't have those strong writing. Let's say some people applying for the Master of Arts in English, and this is what they began. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but after failing calculus, I thought I would try English. Okay, let's say some people like that. What's the better way to say this? I'll give you just a few seconds to think about it, to write it on your own papers. What's the better way to make this sentence a little bit more persuasive for the grad school? If you like to put it on your chat box, that's good too, but you can do it on your own. All right, I will show you a little better way. So how about this? Although I did not begin my studies in English literature, it's now my passion because blah, blah, blah reason. Isn't that way better? Better than, oh, I failed the calculus. That's how I'm thinking about this, right? I'm not joking. Quite a few students that I've seen, they said, yeah, I failed my first year of this, so I thought about the other one. It might be the good reason, but it's not the best reason, right? So you should know how to make your sentence a little bit more positive, right? This is what I mean by that. Another simple, write actively and use detail. So here is one example. In my major, I took 3 lab courses. That's it. What's your suggestion? I give you a little bit of time to think about it. Yes, Sarah, I will share this slide later. So if that's anyone's concern, yeah, it's going to be shared by PDF format. So think about this. In my major, I took 3 lab courses. Instead of that, how about this? In the 3rd year biology lab, specifically, I performed complex lab experiments for Professor somebody's research project in which I did these kind of things. You need this detail. This is evidence. This is something that the people who's reading going to get it clearly, right? So think differently. One more example. I think I could possibly achieve. This doesn't really giving me that clear vision. I think I could, that kind of sentence. So rather than that, how about this? I have the patience and flexibility, okay, competencies, learned in my volunteer work, or learned in my project, learned in my blah, blah, part-time job, whatever, that prepares me for this program, right? So a little more specific and evidence, and be a little bit professional looking, patience and flexibility rather than I think, right? So that's what I mean by, being more specific and active, okay? Statement is taking a long time to develop the good one. I really suggest you to utilize any support that you can find out. So, well, I'm just saying AACC and Writing Center, but definitely the whole tri-campus, there are so many areas you can look into it. UTM has a career center. I'm 100% sure you will get some support, and Writing Center, each campus has it. So trying to utilize every support you can get it. So for example, AACC has, we have appointments that I actually see the students, and also we have a peer appointments that definitely you could make an online appointment. So trying to use it, because it takes time to develop your personal statement, looks really flow, clear, and then persuasive, okay? So CV2, absolutely. So I just want to wrap up. So some of these requirements for the grad school, important things, that there are 3 important things, mandatory thing I must say is a letter of reference, which I'm going to talk next time, which is Thursday. And personal statement, research statement is mandatory. And GPA transcript is mandatory. Okay, these 3 are mandatory, pretty much every grad school. The rest of them is, it could be not, right? So I'm just want to emphasize again, do not underestimate about the personal statement development. It's even more important than GPA in some cases. All right. Briefly, let's say you're not going for the actual master's degree, but you really want to go for those graduate certificate program. which is not requiring so much about those statements, but they might require a little bit of statement. So some of those samples that I actually got it from the Ontario Colleges.ca, which is those programs. If you missed my the first session, I mentioned about this postgraduate certificate program, which is typically 1-year program with placement or internship at the end. Very intensive, but very course-based. And getting into that program is relatively easy because they don't ask for high GPA or anything. You just have to have degree, but you gotta tell them about a little bit about why you want to study this, because they actually want to make sure that that part is done. So they asking very specific question. For this program, we need blah, blah, blah. Why don't you tell me the reason you like to join our program? So you really want to make your serious commitment rather than, well, I'm gonna go for this. Okay, it's the same case. I just want to repeat one more time, make a list. If you're applying for the grad school, making a list, put all those details, admission, deadline, all those things. Otherwise, you're gonna miss something out based on my experience, okay? So I really recommend you to do so. And get help, again, talk to props, TA, people in the campus who's helping you, career advisor, academic advisor, writing center people, academic department also has those people. I'm happy, so go for it. So next step is last session, which is Thursday, again, 11. We're gonna talk about funding, important topics, reference, which is one of those the mandatory things. How to gain this reference from professors. Very delicate topics, by the way. Admission interview is optional in many cases, but more and more I see this is getting common because they want to make sure before they say yes to this student, they want to see you virtually, typically speaking. For the education showcase wraparound session, we share the links. This is the link again. So recordings will be available for all sessions, but for now, just one available. The rest of them will be available later. Okay, and the last thing I like to, well, especially because this is a CV and personal statement, we actually have a lot of peer support. So I actually hire quite a few grad school students who's actually been through this experience. So go to this CLNX and then take a look at the booking options and make an appointment. And they are happy to see you and then give you advice on your CV and personal statement development. And of course, we have a grad school cafe, so you can actually join us. I'm just sharing this is a AACC one, but I'm 100% sure each campus career center has something similar. So I want you to take a look at those resources available on your campus too. Resources I'm sharing here is just simply about some of those personal statement and CV samples and some of those advice. I just want to share with you some YouTube channel too. All right, let's get back to the question. So I have 9 minutes. I think that's good. So I'm just opening up to anyone who has question. You can put it on the chat box, or you can just unmute yourself asking your question. That's totally fine.
You have a few that are unanswered. Do you want me to
yes,
ask
please.
them?
Thank you. Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
So there is a question about the length of I'll just read it out. For personal statements, how many words do you recommend if it isn't specified?
Oh, I see. That's a good question, because rarely, but sometimes I see some grad school saying, okay, just give me a personal statement. And they didn't say anything about it. Well, two options. You still can ask, sending them an email. You said personal statement, but you didn't say anything about words limit or page limit. Could you tell me a little bit about those typical limits? Then they can say. If it's not, and you don't get that kind of information, my suggestion is do not go over 2 pages. Okay, they don't want to read too long pages. Okay, some grad school, they have a very specific question. They have a like 1,000 limit, 2,000 limit. Don't go over the limit for sure, but that's maximum. Okay, less is actually always better. To be honest, more concise format is better. Getting longer doesn't really getting any better score. Absolutely not. So concise format is better. So if they don't have any specific lengths, I say 2 page is maximum. Words limit, 2 page means 750. 1000 is a little bit over usually. So I must say 750 around might be okay for them. Thank you.
Okay, next question. Do we include experiences? Do we only include experiences from our undergrad, or can we include research or papers we wrote in high school as well?
If your high school experience is something meaningful, some might have a like little bit more than just course, and that is relevant to your grad school too, I don't mind to seeing it, but I would put that a little bit lower level than your undergraduate experience. So for example, your undergraduate experience is just 1 or 2 research related. So you really want to bring something up from the high school. So you really want to stretch from that. I don't really think that is a good idea. It almost feels like admission officer going to look at it like, oh, this doesn't have much. That's why he or she is just showing high school one. But then high school one is nothing, anything special. So that's a little bit of negative impression you're gonna give it to them. So be careful about it. However, your high school, you really achieved something. You actually went to competition and you won. Well, you didn't have to win, but you went to competition with that research product you have done with your team, and then maybe your chemistry teacher or somebody. I think that's great achievement. You should definitely mention it if that's the case. Thank you.
There's a couple of parts to this question, or there's a couple of questions within a question, so I'll probably just pick out two.
Yeah.
So if you applied to multiple grad school programs or different schools, can you use the same personal statement, references, and CV for all of them? So use the same ones.
I see. Okay. Content-wise, it's similar maybe, right? If the contents and then what they're asking is similar, well, of course you don't want to copy and paste it. You just want to using the similar content, but you want to change a bit anyway, because each school, even though what they're asking is similar, the school itself is different. The program itself has slightly different nature. Then you want to really rethink about your personal statement. So you don't have to change the whole things. Maybe the frame is same. Maybe you want to emphasize a little bit more about this part rather than that part. So I really don't want you to just making a one statement and then copy and paste. No, that's really big mistake, because there's always something is different. Every grad school is different. So I know it takes a little bit longer time to prepare for this, but that's the best way to secure your admission. So changing a bit, even though it's a similar program. That's my answer for that. Reference, okay, sorry. Reference, we're gonna go back to next week, but you don't, you could ask one professor to provide you a few reference for the few different schools. It's not up to you. It's about the professors. You have to discuss with the professor. You cannot just copy and paste your references. That cannot be done without permission from your professors. So that's something you have to discuss with your professors for that matters. I guess that's answered the question for now. Thank you.
Next question, what tone should we write the CV in, informal or formal?
CVs are always formal. Means, okay, personal statement I mentioned about I sentence, right? I did this, I did this, I did this. That's it, right? CV, you don't use I sentence. Just like a resume, you never use I did blah blah blah. Just like a resume, you said maybe bullet point, I don't know, provided these kind of services to fellow research team by doing this. I don't know, something like that is the tone. So just read the sample that I share is the tone that maybe I should ask anyone to just follow it.
Okay. Next question. Do we have to include research statements for a professional grad program?
If they are asking you to submit a personal statement and they didn't specify this personal statement is a research statement, you don't have to. But let's say you are applying for those MSc, Master of Science, whatever the program. I definitely think that is a research program. And if it is a research degree, whatever they say, personal statement, research statement, that is a research statement. Meaning there's no difference. What you need to include in your research statement is your research interest and your research experience. If you don't have it, sorry, you're not gonna be qualified for their program because that's actually mandatory for them if it's a research degree. If it's not a research degree, that's a different story. Then your statement is not a research statement. Your statement is personal statement or a letter of intent, and there's no separate research statement you have to include it for that.
Okay, another research-related type question. Should you include part-time jobs as an experience? I know for research masters, it's hard for students to get research job, but it would be a good idea to show part-time jobs as an experience, question mark.
What every experience should count. It just volumes of that, descriptions should be different. So if it's more relevant experience, you take more time, more space to explain. If it's a part-time job and you think this is not too relevant, to make it simple, I did this 1 or 2 lines. Research experience in terms of part-time, let's say you have a research volunteer experience, but it was like a month, but that's the only research experience you have. But you are applying for the degree that might want research experience. I think you better a little bit stretching of your research experience for that matters, even though it was part-time or short-term for that matter. So depending on situation, you have to make a different tactic and strategy to develop your CV. If that is a little bit of concern, I think I really recommend you to meet the career advisors, career counselor, career strategist to discuss about your different strategy for that matters. Yes.
Also, there's do we put research experience if it's not directly related to the graduate program?
You know what? If the grad school is not require any research experience, but you have research and experience anyway, then I will include it. Absolutely. I mean, whether the grad school is a research degree or a professional degree, they love to see your research experience if you have it. So if you don't have it, don't get panic. If you're a professional degree applicant, then you don't have to get panic about it. But if you have research experience, that's a bonus, to be honest. So yes, absolutely include it. Oh, thank you so much. Is that the last question, Wendy?
There's 2 more.
Okay, let's go through it because I have a time. So I'm gonna go through it, but if everybody is okay, but it's at 12 o'clock. So let's 2 more and that's it. Thank you. So go ahead. Thank you.
Some course-based graduate programs require CV and personal statements. So would the discussed factors always be relevant? For instance, research experience, personal life, academic achievements, etc.
Well, I guess it's not too different. Unless the grad school asking very specific question for your personal statement, I want to see these, then you should really following it. If they didn't say it, then it's pretty much, there is a typical question that you're just answering. It doesn't matter if a course-based, research-based, or any other professional-based. Typical thing they wanted is, I'm gonna just summarize like this way, is your motivation has to be very clear. Why you wanna study this, okay? And then, so any relevant qualification do you have, relevant education do you have, has to be clear on your body. And before the conclusion, you have to say about, so after this program, what are you going to do? Well, this is the career that I'm thinking of, and I'm gonna go for it. And this school and this program is going to help me so much for this. That's the basic format of a personal statement, to be honest. If that story is flow and clear, even though you're missing some other part, I think that should be really good. Thank you for that.
Last question. But I think you're going to cover this next week. Do you have any suggestions regarding references for students where most of their profs are in upper year courses or not full-time faculty, for instance, lecturers, instructors instead?
So I'm gonna go back to the reference next week, but briefly speaking, the best professor to give you your reference is your full-time course professor is the best. Okay, you took the course from the professor, especially C level, D level, they are the best. If it's not, any full-time professor from any courses that you took, right? You didn't take any course from this professor, but you did actually some volunteer for this professor or some research experience with this professor, that's good professor too. So there are so many other things you should consider, but I don't want you to have a non-professor, meaning like a lecturer who is not a full-time professor, is not considered as an academic reference. And they're going to tell you too. Sometimes some students say, oh, I have a PhD candidate TA. Can TA be my reference? No. The grad school is not going to consider your TA to be your academic reference. So be careful about that. That's the only thing. So I think I think that's it, right, Wendy?
Yes, it is.
Thank you so much, Wendy. You already answered a lot of questions, but students have a lot more questions today. Actually, I noticed that, but we are out of time. However, I recommend you to talk to the career center in your campus, and definitely you could have a more good discussion with them and customize your CV and personal statement properly for your grad school. And then I recommend you to meet the peer mentors, peer coaches. They are grad school students who's helping you guys too. Absolutely, that's another thing.